Blessed are the sick.
Yay!
This meeting
Welcome.
is being recorded.
Welcome to another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel, and another of our episodes of albums reaching milestone anniversaries. It seems like almost every one I do lately is like of this format. This one's celebrating its 30th anniversary. It's celebrated on February 25th of this year. It's Pantera. Vulgar display. Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power. This album helped shape the band into a household name. This album eventually became certified double platinum. And sorry, I'm fumbling here with my notes. Considered to be one of the most influential heavy metal albums of the 1990s. It was recorded at Pantego's Sound Studio and was produced by Terry Date. The album peaked at number 44 on the Billboard 200 and spent a total of 79 weeks on the chart, and is their best-selling release. And on tonight's episode, I have asked my guests to pick 3 songs from the album and give it a rating of 1 to 10 and add anything they'd like to add about Pantera. I would say that Pantera took heavy metal on its back pretty much in the mainstream in the United States in the 90s, because a lot of the thrash metal bands and stuff that we were into kind of started experimenting in the 90s, and Pantera came out and, you know, got to be an arena headlining band, and they were just, you know, didn't have any like radio airplay, didn't have any MTV airplay pretty much, and Phil would be pretty adamant about some of this on stage, of course, and one of his rants that he would go on. And just wanted to do an episode. Tony Dio said, hey, let's talk about Pantera this Wednesday, and it's Wednesday night as we tape this, and we're here in Middletown, New York. I'm going to introduce our panelists tonight. We have a couple new ones, but we will start off. We got Count Ralphus, of course, regular on the channel, and he's our metal historian. And we've got Tony Dio, of course, regular on the channel from down in North Carolina. We got Miles back from Miles of Metal, and this man will throw down and wrestle an alligator if you want him to, but maybe on next week's episode. We've got Stephanie Bayer, who is a new employee at the shop, Rock Fantasy, and I've known for several years, and first just started working with us there. And she's going to talk about Pantera tonight too. I was trying to get her back on the channel for a couple weeks now. I got John and Johnny Cavaluzi, who were part of the Middletown metal scene for years and now reside down by Tony Dio in North Carolina. So we will get things kicked off. I'm going to throw the ball to Ralph first tonight. Kick us off, Ralph.
All right. Well, man, 30 years. Where did time go? Can't believe it.
Exactly.
It seems like yesterday. Yeah, so this album really put Pantera on the map for me. I mean, we heard Cowboys from Hell and stuff, and I thought it was all right, but I didn't get like hooked on it. And even when this album came out, it was one of the heavier bands you were hearing on like Headbangers Ball and stuff. But it took a little while for me to really appreciate it. I've mentioned that on the other episode that we did about Pantera, and I find them to be such an important band at a time where metal was really kind of suffering as far as like you know, the old guard of heavy metal and stuff, and even thrash metal at the time, like the bands were like all trying to jump on the Metallica like bandwagon, so they started getting a little weaker, and that's when death metal really took over for a lot of people. So Pantera really didn't fit in that category, but you couldn't deny how great their playing was, and the production on this album is just amazing. Just listening to it on my ride home from work again last night, and man, you hear everything perfectly. The guitars are really standing out on this, but the drum sound, everything about it, they got categorized, it seems, more in the recent years as a groove metal, like its own category. I always thought that was kind of a weird thing, because the other bands that are put in that category, I don't feel like really sounded like Pantera. But I always kind of consider them more like a thrash band. I guess they weren't full on thrash, but there's times where they are. So they're kind of hard to categorize. But maybe that was what made them so unique at the time. So for my 3 songs, I'm gonna go number 3, Mouth for War, starting off the album.
Mm-hmm.
Great way to kick it off. And I with number 2, I'm going right into the next song, A New Level. I love the way that little guitar part in the beginning before it rips into the song, just amazing. And then the most thrashing song on the album, I'm gonna go as my number 1 is Fucking Hostile.
Cool.
And for a rating, I'd say in their catalog, I would give it an 8.
Okay.
One, I liked it when they got even heavier as time went on, but that was the album that set them on the right course for me. And it's still a classic today. It was great to go back and revisit it. I've seen Pantera a bunch of times live back in the day. My favorite, I talked about the last episode we did on Pantera was when they opened up for Black Sabbath on that reunion tour. That
Yes.
was just an amazing night. You know, that they were a great opening band, and people complained about them being the openers, but I thought they were perfect because they were really flying the flag for metal in the 90s.
And that, and you know, hold on a second, I'll stop you at that thought. And that shows how big they were in the 90s, where people were like, hey, Black Sabbath reunion, and we think that Pantera should be the headliner. You know, that's how, you know, for people that weren't around in the 90s, that's how big they had become by that was in the late 90s, that Sabbath reunion. And I was at the same show you were, I'm sure, at the Meadowlands Arena, Brendan Byrne Arena, whatever. Deftones were also on that too, which I don't remember hardly, but I think they were the first band that was Pantera, because I remember the concert, the parking lot sure has Deftones on it still.
That was such an important show at the time, because it was the first time headlining with Black Sabbath with Bill Ward back in the band, and just doing a full headline set, not the Ozfest set.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a limousine down to that show, which is the only time I ever did that. So we didn't even go in for the Deftones because we were parking lot.
I thought you just fell over there. Oh, there she is. She's back. And you talked about how Metallica had gotten softer around that time. So that was one of the things that I read about this album as I was taking notes, and they said that they wanted to make this the heaviest thing ever because they were so disappointed in Metallica going from their thrash and heavy ways to start to mellow out, that's why they really wanted to make this a very heavy record that they were talking about, Pantera themselves.
There's hints of Metallica throughout this album. Like there's a couple parts here and there where I go, yeah, that sounds like Ride the Lightning parts or something, you know. So they definitely were influenced by that. But you know, so many bands from thrash metal era were you know, trying to follow the money, and the same thing happened to the old guard of heavy metal when like the Motley Crues and the hair metal started getting really big. A lot of the classic metal bands like started spooging up their hair and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that opened the door for thrash metal to get big because people didn't want to follow that like glam stuff. And then when thrash started getting weak, that opened the door for death metal. And then you know, when the death metal scene got flooded, then the doors opened more for black metal. And it, you know, it happens with all the scenes. You know, everybody tries to follow the one band that's really making it big, you know. Pantera definitely broke down the doors with this album, and I'm glad I got to see him so many times back in the day. Seen him with Morbid Angel and Typo Negative, and I should have had the list of all the.
I saw them at in Albany at the arena there in Albany, New York, and they were on the road with Sepultura and Biohazard, and Pantera were the headliners. And then I saw another leg of that tour at Nassau Coliseum where Prong was actually on the bill. I think Prong may have replaced Sepultura, but I could be wrong. Somebody will correct me in the notes, but cool. So Ralph, thanks for your input. We might kick back to you and talk about some concerts or something if you want, but who wants to go second? I think we're going to give one of my new guests, Stephanie from Rock Fantasy, and let's hear what she's got to say about the Vulgar Display of Power.
All right, so I'm gonna piggyback off of Ralph and say that this album definitely is what, you know, got Pantera out there. You know, I'm gonna keep it short and say my 3 favorite albums or my three favorite songs off this album is gonna be This Love, Mouth for War, and Walk. This Love kind of was like corny for me in a way.
Mhm.
I thought it was kind of like sentimental, but actually Phil did an interview saying that it was about clingy girls at his age. So I don't know. I was kind of wrong about it, but it could be like whatever you make it to be.
Yes, yes.
For Walk, I'm gonna say in high school, I'm a little different from other girls, and it made me kind of not care what the fuck people think about me, you know.
Mhm.
Gave me like the power to get through and just tell them to kind of fuck off. And then Mouth for War, I'm gonna say obviously Dimebag is always sick on the riffs, and Vinnie Paul, but that one gets me going. It like gets me ready to go for the night, you know.
Yeah,
I don't know where I'm going. I'm not gonna fight anyone, but
you're ready to go.
it gets me ready to go.
Cool.
So, you know, I'm just gonna keep it at that.
What kind of a rating would you give the album on a 1 to 10 scale?
So on a 1 to 10, I'm gonna say probably an 8. This is pretty much what got me into metal in the first place. So yeah.
Yeah, so it could even be a little higher maybe then.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, thanks for giving us your input and finally coming on to the Rock Fantasy Files. I hope that you'll come back again soon. You may pop off before we're done, you said, because you got something going on, so you're not feeling so good or something. But if you want to leave, you can. We'll just wave goodbye. But it won't be too long tonight. It's only 6 of us, so.
All right.
But thanks, and feel free to put any input in if you want to talk. Cut us off.
All right.
I'm going to go with somebody from North Carolina, and they're brand new. And I don't know if they both want to go at the same time, but we got 2 people in the square, so they could take turns if they want. But John and Johnny Cavaluzi, I don't think I've met your son before. I heard that he's in a metal band, Ralph was telling me. Very cool.
Yes, I actually have a shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Stench of
Stench of Decay.
Decay.
Ooh. And how old is he?
Yeah, I'm the only member. I'm 14.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So he's the only member. You'll see behind me is his drum kit back there.
Oh.
Double
And then
bass.
you'll see
That's what's up.
He's got his guitar. He's got his bass, his guitar, and he just kind of goes at it all by himself and tries putting things together. It's pretty cool, definitely.
Nice.
That's what's up.
Good to see some.
Well, I just want to say thanks for having us too, man. We appreciate it.
And you are the youngest member to ever be on the Rock Fantasy Files, Johnny. There we go. So we
That
need
makes
the
me
youth.
happy
We
to
need
hear.
some youth. We got some youth on. So cool.
That's
Well,
cool.
let's hear
He
your
goes
picks.
to a lot of shows. He's pretty much there every. We go to a show about every other week. I think our next show is the 12th. We're going to see Nile in Greensboro. So we
Yes.
just saw Cannibal last week. We saw Cannibal Corpse last week. So
Oh yeah.
that was in Winston-Salem. So that was pretty great.
Well, make sure when you go to Nile and Incantation that you walk up and say hello to Mr. McAtee and tell him that you were on the Rock Fantasy Files, because you're taking his spot, because he's on tour. So
Yeah.
other than that, he's here every week with us.
I'm planning to
You
go to that
watch it
show
every
too, John.
Yeah.
I'm planning to
cool.
go as well.
So you guys will have to have
Excellent.
one of these together.
I'll get your number from you before we get off this thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
All right. So let's
That's
hear your
awesome.
picks. Let's hear your picks from the Cavaluzis.
I mean, I could tell you the same exact story, almost like Ralph literally went and sucked every idea I had out of my mind and threw them all out there. But pretty much the exact same thing. When Pantera came to me, I wasn't listening to a lot of thrash. I kind of felt like Ralph did. It had taken a turn for the worst, and I really wasn't big on like New Testament, New Megadeth, New Metallica, any of that stuff. So I had gotten into anything that came from like Morrisound Studios. I was into Bolt Thrower and Morbid Angel and all that stuff. And the only time I would go with anything that was lighter was more like things that were obscure, like Ministry and Primus. I didn't even want to go almost near thrash at the time. It was really, really stupid of me, to be honest with you. Like somehow I thought I had progressed past it or something. I don't really know what my mindset was, but I wasn't doing it. And I was at a party. I was probably like 22 years old. It's 1992. So I was at a party, just a small one. We're playing a drinking game. And there were a couple guys there from Goshen that I knew they were into metal, but I honestly didn't think they would be into my kind of metal at all, like death metal at all. So I didn't really like hang out with them as much. And all of a sudden they had played this brand new CD that they were talking about, and it came on, and I was almost embarrassed that I had not heard it, didn't know it, like that they knew so much more than I did. But it was pretty mind blowing. That whole guitar tone, everything about it was like, and like Ralph said, the production, it was so crystal clear. It was mind blowing. So anyway, it was one of those CDs too. Like I got probably within the next couple of days, and I took it up to college, and it was none of my friends up there wanted to hear Cannibal Corpse or Napalm Death, Harmony Corruption. They didn't like any of that. But when I put that on for them, they all of a sudden got into metal. So once again, Ralph's 100% right. They really broke out all of the doors, and we wound up going up and seeing them 2 years later, 2 tours later on the Far Beyond Driven at the Knickerbocker that you had mentioned with Sepultura and Biohazard.
Yeah.
And Biohazard played way too long of a set for me. That was ridiculous.
God,
and
you got a better
Sepultura
memory
got
than
a
I
real
do.
short set.
Hmm.
It was brutal because at that time Biohazard somehow found their way on every good tour. I don't know how they did it, but they were on every good tour. And I wasn't a big fan. It was
No,
almost like that was like the time to go to the bar, get a drink, you know.
I was
like
at that.
Biohazard.
I like Biohazard, but
I like Biohazard.
that night I have fond memories because a guest we had on last week when we were talking about Korn and the Deftones. I had Brian Lima, who worked for Epic Records and he got us backstage that night, and we got to hang out with Sepultura. And I think we were actually doing the meet and greet, maybe while Biohazard. You know, it's usually I think Biohazard may have been on while we were back there, so I didn't see much. But anyhow, yeah. Fond memories of that show.
It was a good show. I wish Sepultura played longer, but it was great. But anyway, as far as my 3 songs, I'm gonna have to change one because Ralph and I had the exact same order. So I have to get rid of something. So I'll have to throw in By Demons Be Driven, and we'll replace Mouth for War for that one. But outside of that, we had the exact same list.
Okay, what about your son?
So Hostile would be number 1. Hostile 1, New Level, and then I'll go with By Demons Be Driven.
Cool.
You're up.
What about
My
what about
3 would.
what about Junior then?
My top 3 would be A New Level, Rise, and By Demons Be Driven.
Okay, cool. And Johnny, do you listen to Pantera normally, or did you just kind of brush through it knowing you were going to do the episode, or is it something you're familiar with and what you listen to?
I listen to it a ton. I got a Pantera patch.
Okay.
My first show was Phil Anselmo and the Illegals opening up for Slayer with Ministry and Primus.
Okay. Yeah. The final Slayer leg of the final Slayer tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And look what's happened to the world since Slayer quit. It's all been downhill since. Come back, Slayer.
Good.
Don't win this shit.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I guess we'll hop over to Tony Dio.
And also the same thing. I would also say that, just like Rob said, I thought their albums got progressively better from there on out. They got heavier. They were really, by the time that Reinventing the Steel came out, I thought they were killing it.
Yeah, I like Reinventing the Steel. I like the Great Southern Trendkill. That could be my favorite one by Pantera. But
Yeah.
all solid. I mean, I got a little played out with them maybe 10 years ago, but I've put their stuff on the shelf for a while. Now that I listen to it, it's very fresh. It's heavy. It's good. I had some friends that were just a little bit too much into Pantera, so I kind of like stepped back a little bit. But it's just a tragic story about this band, because I'm sure if Dimebag would have still been alive, that we would have saw them get back together eventually. And,
sure.
and
sure.
then of course, his brother leaving us tragically. And if you want to loop back, we have a episode of Pantera we did last year on the channel, and we had Denny Barth on, and Denny had a wonderful story that almost make you cry about how when he met Vinnie Paul in Vegas, and they just hung out and had this great time, and then he never got to talk to him again because he got the call that heard the call that he had passed. So it's another band that we won't get to see again, and it's I'm glad that we got to touch base again on them with such a strong release. And I'm going to hop it over to Tony Dio, and then we'll go to Miles, and we'll finish up with me, and we'll move on to something else.
Hey, it's always good to be here on Rock Fantasy Files. It's just like Ralph said, 30 years, where did it go? It seems like I remember buying Vulgar Display of Power. I mean, we're buying it on cassette originally when it first came out. And it's a great record. It's just it's a new level is a good way of putting it, because
Yes,
they definitely raised the bar with it and were very influential to what would happen in metal from then on. Now, I've been a longtime fan of them because I was into them in the early days when they had Terry Glaze singing, and people say it's hair metal, but it was heavy metal for what heavy metal was at that time.
yes.
They looked like everybody else pretty much. I mean, even Maiden and Priest and stuff wore spandex and hairspray here and there. But
I'm glad you brought that up, Tony, because it's almost like there's a lot of people out there that aren't as into it as you are, that think that this is their second album. They think that it's Cowboys from Hell and that's it. And I mean, you can't blame them a little bit, because the band kind of swept those things under the rug, and they still got them. They still got them under the sofa. Now they've never been officially released for much part.
Independently released albums, basically not really demos, because they're professionally done albums. They sound great.
Yeah,
they put them out themselves independently, and I think when on the third album, on the fourth album, Power Metal was when Phil joined. That album got more distro. I think it was you would see that out more back in those days, because the first one I ever got was Projects in the Jungle, and then some years later I remember being in a store and ran across Power Metal on cassette and picked it up, and I liked what I heard, the progression and so forth. But I still remember the day of buying Cowboys from Hell for the first time, and the first time it went into tape deck, it was like, wow, what is this? This is totally like 180 of what they've been doing. And it was just, that whole power groove thing that they had going on, and the heaviness of it. And Phil was still singing more. He had more of a singing voice on Cowboys from Hell. He got a little more aggressive when Vulgar came out. Because when you listen to Power Metal, he sounds almost like, he could sing like Rob Halford. He's all, with the high pitched vocals and so forth. So Cowboys was definitely a progression from that. And then, of course, they just started getting heavier. And I did get to see them. I saw them on the Cowboys from Hell tour. They did a club in Raleigh, and I saw them. Then they came back again with Wrathchild America and played Raleigh. And so, I was keeping up with it, and I really loved Cowboys from Hell. I thought it was a great record. So when Vulgar came in, right when Vulgar came out, I saw them. They were touring with Skid Row. We were on the Slave to the Grind tour, and they were opening for Skid Row. And basically, Skid Row puts on a great show. Those guys put on a high energy show, but Pantera is just killing them every night, I'm sure, because they were Pantera. I wouldn't even want to have to follow Pantera. And that was a great show. And so Vulgar Display, if I got to pick, 3 songs from it, I'm going to go Mouthful War for sure, and New Level. And it's really hard to pick a third song. I like so many of them on here, but I'm probably going to go with, By Demons Be Driven. That's just such a really heavy, and I love the whole Beck and the Call part, and it's really cool. It's really deep. And like I said, it's a great record all over. I would give it an 8 out of 10 for sure. And but like I said, it was a game changer album. When this came out, everybody was getting into Pantera. All these bands are trying to do the groove thing. You even saw bands like, Judas Priest toured, or Pantera toured with Judas Priest. I think it was on the Ram It Down tour when Cowboys was out. And you even saw when Painkiller came out, Rob Halford's stage presence was almost like he had watched Phil Anselmo every night. He was doing these little struts like Phil would do. He kind of changed his whole stage demeanor. And
That's true. He did fight. That was
and then,
like he was totally
exactly. So you had Rob Halford goes off, quits. He does Fight. Sounds like Pantera. I don't know if you guys ever heard it, but Paul Di'Anno had a band called Killers after Maiden. The second Killers album, when it came out, it sounded just like Pantera, to the point where I would play it from people and say, "Hey, have you heard the new Pantera record?" And they'd go, "Wow, this is great," but it was really Paul Di'Anno's Killers. It sounds just like a Pantera record. Because then, of course, Ex Hoarder gets signed. So if you get into Ex Hoarder, you go, "Oh, wow, they sound like Pantera," but no, that's the band that Phil wanted to sound like was Ex Hoarder.
I'm glad you guys mentioned that because I've talked to the guys from Ex Hoarder, and there's a lot of people that'll go when they first heard Pantera that knew about Ex Hoarder already. Were like, wow, and I mean, Phil will admit to it that he was a big fan of that of Ex Hoarder. So yeah.
So he definitely steered them in that direction, the Pantera guys, and they got heavier, but they were so influential. Like I said, so many bands were trying to sound like Pantera, and then they pretty much planted the seed for part of what would become nu metal, because there were so many of the nu metal bands that were highly influenced by Pantera, I think, because then you had all these different styles coming out, and it was less about the image as far as the old style, and then they come up with this more hardcore image and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
So Pantera was very influential in that as well. And I think they get a lot of flack nowadays. I hear a lot of people that just hate on Pantera. And then there's a whole group, these younger metalheads that love the early Pantera. They love the Terry Glaze era, and they praise it because all that stuff's out on bootleg CDs and records now. You can buy it. And so it's like a whole different generation are getting into the early Pantera that a lot of the people our age didn't even know about because they thought that Cowboys was their first album. So it's kind of weird, but I think they're probably one of the best metal bands of all time, most influential metal bands of all time, for sure. And it's a shame that they're not with us anymore. And can't be with us.
Definitely one of the most influential. We still sell tons of their t-shirts in the shop, and we still get requests. They reissued a lot of the vinyl last fall, and now that's even hard to get now again and restock.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know how many times I saw them live. I know it was, I don't know, at least a dozen times over the years.
Mm-hmm.
They did come around here a whole lot, and they were always in these package tours and stuff as well. Like by the time that Far Beyond Driven came out, they were doing a lot of tour in the area with these package tours and Ozfest and so forth.
For sure. Cool.
But yeah, that's it.
And I guess we're going to move down to Louisiana to kind of start to wrap this episode up. And what better than to have someone from Louisiana to talk about Pantera on the episode. So welcome, Miles of Metal.
Yeah, so first off, I would like to thank my dad for getting me into Pantera because I'm a little bit younger. I'm only 28, but I was maybe 10, 11. My dad, I'm listening to like Green Day or Blink 182, whatever the hell I'm listening to at the time. My dad throws me freaking Cowboys from there. He said, "Hey, boy, put on this," and it kicked my ass ever since the first time I ever heard Pantera. And just like Tony said, they got people that hate on Pantera now. I even know people that talk smack on Pantera, and I will never ever do it. And I'll get into that a little bit later when I talk about it. But Vulgar Display of Power is the second Pantera album I ever heard. The first one's obviously Cowboys. But when the first time I ever heard that album, I was like, man, you know what? You know, the picture, the album cover is like a perfect example of what this album feels like. It feels like somebody's punching you in the face the whole time you listening to it. And just the songs on here are so aggressive to where if somebody would play this at a bar room and you got a problem with somebody, it's like you go and settle that problem right now because it's just an aggressive album. You know, you got This Is Love, and it starts off kind of, you know, kind of slow, but then when Phil hits it up and starts going crazy on it, you know, the whole album is so influential, like everyone said. You know, I was a kid during the 90s. I was born in 93. And, you know, metal at that time was taking a back seat to grunge and everything. And, you know, new metal was flying the flag, but Pantera didn't care. They were still putting out some of the heaviest albums. You know, you had death metal, but they were more like a thrash groove type deal, you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as heavy, you know, where some people would be turned off to say, let's just say, like a Morbid Angel or a Cannibal Corpse. You know, people can still get into Pantera because they are aggressive, heavy metal, but they're not so much in your face. If I had to pick three, well, if I had to rate the album, I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. You know, this is just, you know, this album is just one of the albums that I remember the first time I heard it. I remember, you know, I was like, when Mouth for War comes on, I'm just like, holy shit, this is badass. And if I had to pick three, I would go with Mouth for War at number 3, Walk for number 2, because that ending part with Dime and Vinny just hitting it up with that guitar riff and that drum pattern, it gets me pumped. I want to run through a wall every time that ending part. Sometimes I just turn on Walk and listen to that ending part because it's just so freaking awesome. My favorite song off this album is fucking Hostile. It's just so awesome. Great freaking song. This is a great album. So a little thing about Pantera is obviously I listened to Pantera when I was young, and going back and thinking about Pantera, it's like, it's crazy to think how much this band has influenced my music taste for a long time, because this is one of the first bands besides Metallica that got me into heavy music. And then when I'm a kid and I learn, you know what, Phil is from freaking 45 minutes from where I'm from, you know, back then I'm like, man, we ain't got no metal bands around here. Well, that's just me at the time. And I'm like, well, look at the singer from Pantera. He's he's right there.
Yeah.
And then when I go back and think about it, because I was so big into Pantera, you know, black metal. I got into black metal because I seen Phil wearing a freaking Dark Throne Transylvanian Hunger shirt. And I remember that shirt, and I was just like, what band is that? And then I'm learning that it's Dark Throne, and I get into Dark Throne. And then what I like about Phil is that throughout his whole time with Pantera, he knew that Pantera was getting big. He knew that Pantera was gaining a lot of popularity. So what he did was he wore a lot of the local New Orleans band shirts on stage in the videos, like Crowbar, I Hate God, all those bands, and really, you know, did the promotion for him. And I seen a documentary about the New Orleans scene, and Phil said, yeah, I thought these bands were awesome, like Exhorder and all of them. I thought these bands were awesome, but they were getting no play. So I would deliberately go out there, and it was well placed that I would wear these shirts and put on these smaller bands out there. And then going into Dime and Vinny, I grew up playing the drums. I was a drummer, and Vinny was one of my favorite drummers for the longest time. And actually, going back to how Pantera influenced me was I remember seeing, I always did like the Dallas Cowboys, but one thing I always remember is when Vinnie Paul would be ripping up on them drums with a Dallas Cowboys shirt and hat on. And I was like, this is just so damn awesome. And Dimebag is, his guitar playing speaks for itself. It's beautiful with his guitar solos and everything like that, but it's also aggressive and punches you in the teeth every time you hear it. And I don't care what nobody says, that breakdown on Domination is one of the best things I've ever heard before in my life. And if it would come on right now, this hat would fly off and my hair would go flying.
Put it on. Put it on.
No, I'm not, I might get a headache. But yeah, Pantera, it's crazy to think that, we would never get another Pantera album, because really, I remember when you mentioned that when Vinnie Paul passed away. When Vinnie Paul passed away, I was like really distraught. I was like, good Lord, man, this shit's just going downhill quick. Dime, we already lost Dime for stupid reason, for a freaking, crazy fan that, we already lost Dom to something crazy, and then we lose his brother. So one thing I always said is my first Time Machine showed that if I could go back and see a band, it would be Pantera. Because I want to, in New Orleans, because I would think that would be so badass. And also, if you're from Louisiana and you tell somebody that you hate Pantera, I feel bad for you, because they got a lot of hardcore Pantera fans down here.
And that's such a loss, with those two brothers gone, because from what I gather, I never got to meet them, but from everybody else that I knew in the music industry, they were so hospitable, and bands would come on tour to come to there, and they would do anything for you. And that was another story about Pantera, how hospitable those brothers were, and the band was to others. They had their strip club and they had everything going on. And I recently saw that they were selling one of their mansions that they had down there. Maybe Miles, you should go buy that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a few more dollars. I gotta go to work a few more times, and then maybe I can get it.
Someone should buy it and turn it into a Pantera museum.
That would be so awesome.
Somebody like Dave Grohl or somebody that's got a lot of money or something.
Yeah, we need like Danzig.
I'd buy tickets to go,
or somebody.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that Pantera, being Dime's guitar playing, Dime was the guitar hero through the 90s. I think maybe Zach Wilde as well, but they kept the flag flying for guitar solos.
Yes.
So many bands are dropping solos or just going off and doing some weird harmonics or something, not really playing a guitar solo. And Dime definitely kept it going. He was the guitar hero of the 90s, and they waved the metal flag. I mean, like real metal. They waved the flag, all through that time, when there was times, during the 90s and early 2000s where metal wasn't cool, supposedly, and it was always cool with me, but there were bands like Anthrax were like, well, we're just a hard rock band, we're not a metal band. I'm like, oh yeah, screw you, man.
The thing about Don's guitar playing with his solos is you can tell his influences, because those solos ain't just some throwaway solos that are like some run-of-the-mill solos. These are some memorable solos on a lot of Pantera songs.
Yeah. Of course, he was influenced by, of course, Eddie Van Halen. He was influenced by Ace Frehley and those guys.
Randy Rhoads.
And Randy, and they were all, those guys, not Randy, because Randy had passed, but those guys were tight with those guys too, And
yeah,
I thought one of the coolest stories I ever heard was when Dimebag had passed away. At his funeral, Eddie Van Halen, he always loved that Bumblebee guitar from Van Halen 2, and he wanted to, and Eddie Van Halen told him before he had passed away that he was going to get him a replica one. When he passed away, Eddie Van Halen at his funeral put the real one in his casket, because he said he's better than a replica. He needs the real deal.
Yeah.
I thought that was just awesome.
Original. Yeah.
Steve Levin bring up a great point the last time too about, since Dimebag, there hasn't been that guitar god where, I mean, there's tons of great players out there, but there hasn't been like another person that had that charisma where they're like the next Eddie Van Halen or something. There's guys that can play that good and everything, but we haven't had anybody step up in the music world that's like a new guitar god for metal.
Yeah.
That is 100% true.
There's a lot of great players, but nobody seems to have that total package, the pizzazz and the skills and everything. Because Dimebag was a character.
Oh,
as
the
well.
Dime Vision, yeah. My buddy wore that out there. Johnny Mop, who was going to be with us tonight. He's the biggest Pantera fan I know. He got called into work, so he couldn't join us tonight. But oh yeah,
this is like it goes with the Dime Vision. This actually came with the DVD in the end, in the back.
Yeah.
It came with like a companion book to it.
Yeah.
And I got the Dimebag's Black Tooth Grin book, and I read
Black Tooth Grin.
My buddy does the Black Tooth Grin every year on that day, when they do a little fire out back, and Steph knows who I'm talking about. So does Ralph, and I think Johnny might too. Johnny Mop, Johnny Longley. He's a huge Pantera guy. I mean, he was upset he couldn't make it tonight with us, but I guess I should give my picks before I forget and I hang up. What's that, John?
I was just saying, I think that's one of the things that made him great too, is like all those DVDs of them partying. It just made them seem like regular guys. You could just go hang out with them anytime. They were awesome.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Even no matter how crazy Phil got.
Well, I guess
DVDs they're legendary.
I guess I should give my 3 picks, because this happened on an episode and we stopped and they're like, Kaler, you never gave your picks. So I'm going to start off with A New Level, because when this album came out, that was a great opening statement. It was a new level of this heaviness, and from a band that, like I said, I echo Ralph, where a lot of us went from thrash metal and the traditional metal into the death metal underground, as I did, because like they say that grunge killed hair metal, and it did, the glam metal, and it really did kill the metal in the big sales. But we saw the whole underground metal go into the underground with the death metal style, and then in the in the 90s with black metal. But Pantera were the US band that really kept it going, and built up as an opening act to play arenas and kept that flag flying. And Phil would tell you on stage every time you'd see him, like, we're the baddest motherfucking band on the planet. And, he'd do that whole. Miles could probably do a better impression than me because he's got the accent. But my 3 songs, I'm going to go with New Level to start off, and Mouth for War, another great song. I mean, all these songs got such great riffs, and Fucking Hostile, I would go in my top 3 too. But Demons Be Driven with the Beck and the Claw, somebody brought up. I kind of forgot about that part of the song. That's another. I mean, this is like a perfect metal album. I don't know how you couldn't say it. Well, I would give it a 9. I don't know how you don't give it a 10, really. I mean, I'm a little played out with the song Walk. I've heard it way too much in my life,
but it's great.
But I'm not going to complain. I mean, I haven't heard it in a while now, because I haven't been to a real metal show in a couple of years, because almost every metal show you go to, you'd hear either Back in Black or Vulgar Display of Power or something where you hear those same songs over and over again while you're in between bands. But
I think that's why I gave it an 8, because they're all played out to me.
Yeah, but it's always played out if you have to listen to it too much. If you put it on the shelf for a few years and then you bring it out and you're like, oh, this is all good. And I don't, it's not like I don't listen to regular radio. So I'll talk about that with anything, with the classic rock bands or whatever. But hey, the viewers, I hope you like this episode, and please mention your 3 favorite Pantera songs from this album in the comments, and Pantera concert memories or anything else. And I hope you guys tune in again soon and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because we've got plenty of fun chats planned coming up. We're going to have Immolation go against Cannibal Corpse in another battle of 1992. We're going to have Marta go head to head with Dark Funeral too. We've got a lot of stuff planned, and hopefully I'll be talking to Hammerfall next week too. So I'm trying to interview them for their new album and do a few other things. And like to thank everybody. Stay strong, stay metal, stay healthy, whatever else you got to do. But who wants to get the last word tonight? Miles does.
I forgot to say, me and this album share a birthday.
Oh, you.
February 25th.
Oh,
I forgot about that.
Happy birthday, man.
happy belated
belated.
birthday to you. my
Oh,
friend.
thank you. I already feel my back hurting. I'm getting too old.
Oh,
Shit,
it's all
wait,
downhill from here, bud.
Yeah, I already know. Since
Wait till you're
21, it's
my
been
age.
downhill.
And a bunch of the guys on the channel here are probably going, or a couple people are going to Overkill tomorrow night. Are you going, Steph?
No, it's
Not
on a
having-
work night. I can't.
No, okay. Ralph's going. So cool. So stay strong, everybody, and it's a new level of Rock Fantasy Files tonight.
Thanks, Steve.